All right, everyone. Playoff season for the Carolina Hurricanes, and I'm here to give you my playoff predictions ahead of the Carolina Hurricanes playing it at the time of recording 3 hours. So, not very many videos, but I want an opportunity to come back, see what I get right, see what I get wrong in terms of my playoff predictions. Let me pull up the playoff bracket here tonight. Obviously, I'm rooting for Carolina, but do I have Carolina winning the Stanley Cup? Yes. Well, no, we'll see. I'm still debating on it as we go. We're doing it live, everyone. So, yeah, there we go. We got the playoff bracket up here on NHL.com. So let's start with Florida and Tampa Bay. So going into this, it's tough because Tampa Bay, I've said, is on the downswing, but Tampa Bay got hot, white hot to make the playoffs. They had to grind to get in there. And that's kind of how they won their two cups. They had the President's Trophy in 2019, but they lost in, I believe, the first round last year. Might have been, yeah, it was the first round because last year it was, shit, I'm trying to remember. Toronto, yeah, they lost to Toronto. So while I do have, I've been underestimating Tampa quite a bit, I'm going to continue my whole thing of underestimating Tampa Bay and doing the stupid thing, which is betting against Vasilevsky, who's the great, I call Vasilevsky the greatest goalie I've ever seen play. But I'm betting against Vasilevsky and Hedman and Stamkos and Kucherov in the playoffs. And I'm going with Florida. I think Florida's on the upswing. I think Florida is a definitive contender to win the Stanley Cup. I would say they're top five teams in the league the way they've been run. They have the grit. Like they play playoff style hockey all year, so they should do well in the playoffs. And I have them beating Tampa Bay and winning their first Battle of Florida. Boston versus Toronto. All conventional wisdom says I actually should go for Toronto. Toronto is due to beat Boston, just simple mathematics. As Odin comes down here, I guess Odin's one of the people who loves when people start talking about the Leafs. This is my old English, by the way. But Boston, I kind of think continues that tradition of winning. They lost in the first round last year. I think in terms of Toronto versus Boston, I think, I think Toronto, I don't know. Toronto's got more physical. All conventional wisdom says to pick Toronto. So I'm just going to go with Boston, which I really probably shouldn't. Next up, we got the Rangers versus the Capitals. And full disclosure, the Rangers, as I'm wearing a Hurricanes jersey, the Rangers are my least favorite team. I've called them a poverty franchise before, or jokingly, especially on Twitter. I have a lot of fun crapping on the Rangers, and the Rangers have been a wagon this year. They won the President's Trophy. They've been consistently elite all year long. You kind of have to win the President's Trophy, and it doesn't feel like they got hot and cold. Washington barely soaked in the playoffs. This should be an upset. However, I hate the Rangers so much. I'm locking in my official prediction as the Capitals upsetting the Rangers because upsets have got to happen. And even though it won't because I hate the Rangers and I'm cheering against the Rangers and I don't get nice things when it comes to watching hockey, I have the Capitals beating the Rangers, even though I know it probably won't happen. But some teams got to upset. Highest goal differential in playoff hockey history, or worst goal differential in playoff hockey history. I'm going with the Washington Capitals to beat the New York Rangers. Next up, Carolina and the Islanders. Now, I'm biased. I will fully admit that. I think the Islanders really can grind a team down. They got a good goalie. Carolina's previous playoff struggles have been get hit running into goalies getting hot and getting eliminated. It happened with Vasilevsky in 2021. It happened with Shesterkin in 2022, and it happened with Bobrovsky in 2023. And not Shesterkin. Shesterkin plays for the Rangers. There's two Russian goalies playing for New York teams. It's easy to get them mixed up, and the Islanders have really good goaltending, and I'm blanking on their goalie's name, which is great analyst by me. But I think Carolina potentially, they were dealing with injuries last year. You can factor that in. They're going to have Svech. They're going to have Aho. They've added Gensel, who's fit in well. Kucherov seems to be doing well in Carolina, not as well as Gensel. Gensel's been above a point per game for Carolina since coming in. He plays well with Aho. Carolina, they're going to be full. Teravainen's going to be back. And Jarvis is really, this seems to be the breakout year for Jarvis. I'm going with Carolina winning, and I think Carolina really has the potential to do something in the playoffs this year as a Canes fan saying it. And, in Rod we trust. I'm wearing his jersey, all that. Next up, Dallas versus the Vegas LTIRs. Like, Vegas is the defending Stanley Cup champions, but they don't feel dangerous this year. I think even last year, a little bit, Vegas felt dangerous, especially when my top three teams made it to the second round. And my least favorite Western Conference team, Vegas, made it to the second round. I said, Hockey gods giveth and taketh. Vegas is probably winning the cup, and Vegas won the cup because I can't have nice things. Just the year where things go right for teams I cheer for. But aside from that, I think, and I would pick Vegas, but I realized I've been underestimating Dallas for way too long. Dallas has been a really good team now. I think they had a really good core. It seemed like 2020 was a last gasp, but then with the rise of some of their younger players, Robertson, I think, Heiskanen, I really think Dallas can do something this year. I think Dallas is going to be a really good team for a long time. And I think 2020 was more the coming out party. I have Dallas winning. Winnipeg versus Colorado. I'm going to give it to Colorado. Even though Colorado's my second favorite team, I haven't followed these teams super well. I know Winnipeg definitely outsourced some of their demons. But yeah, I got to go with Colorado, just playoff experience. I think playoff experience does take some teams further in the playoffs than they otherwise would because they've been there before. Vancouver, Nashville. I think Vancouver is going to be good for a while. I think the future is actually sort of bright in Vancouver. But just taking everything as it is right now, I am going to go with um, Nashville because they're an older team. They got experience. And like I said, upsets happen. I don't think this will be a permanent thing for Vancouver, but I have Nashville, which is a change from my previous prediction. But I'm going to go with Nashville advancing. Nashville, they had to be playing playoff hockey for a while. And then we got Edmonton, LA. So I will get into it when I tell Dad, but I think if Edmonton does something, LA is going to be the toughest matchup. LA's learned how to play Edmonton. I think Edmonton's the better team regardless, but I do think if a team is going to do something against Edmonton, really, it's going to be LA. And I have Edmonton winning, but I think Edmonton could lose in the first round because LA's played them twice in a row. And when teams play each other over and over again, LA, eventually that team loses. So I think Edmonton, they should not take LA lightly. And yeah, I have LA winning. All right. Next up, we got round two. I had Florida beating Tampa, and I had Boston beating Toronto. In the Elite Eight, I have Florida beating Toronto. So, that's the conventional wisdom there. I have, I think Boston plays a team that, I know Boston had a better record, but I think Toronto should be the favorites normally. But I think Florida, they're a better team than Boston now, and I think Florida, they won the President's Trophy, made it to the conference final. I think they make it to the conference final again. I think Florida's a perennial Cup favorite. Next up, Carolina versus Washington, because I had Washington beating the Rangers, and I want to live in this world. Um, I'm gonna have Washington losing to Carolina, of course. I think if Washington beats the Rangers, we could be seeing a last gasp for sorry, I got some lint or something on my beard. I'm trying to take care of that. Yeah, I got my dog got something in my beard. Sorry about that. But I have Carolina beating Washington in the second round going to the conference finals, which means we do have a rematch of the East between Carolina and Florida. I think Washington could win a round. There's always a year where an older team wins a round. Chicago did it against Edmonton. Edmonton was the younger team, but Chicago, Kane and Taves, in their last gasp, they won a round. Next up, I had Dallas versus Colorado. I think as much as Colorado seemed to be a burgeoning empire, they might be a core that only wins one cup with land under the McKinnon and Makar era. I mean, I think they get another cup with Makar at some point in the next 10 years. But I think, like I don't think Colorado's completely fixed their second line center for a cup winning team. I don't think they've replaced Kadri. Kadri was such a big role. As I think good as Johansson's been, I follow Colorado not as much as I normally do, but I think as good as Colorado's been, I think Dallas is really claiming the Central Division. Colorado struggles against Dallas. I have Dallas going to the conference final. Edmonton versus Nashville, same thing. I think despite Nashville getting the upset, I think McDavid's a wagon this year after having that horrible October and November. Edmonton's been unstoppable. I think LA will give him a hard time. I don't think Nashville or Vancouver would give Edmonton a super hard time despite the beginning of the season with the Canucks and Edmonton. So I have Edmonton winning, which means the Eastern Conference, the final four are Florida, Carolina, Dallas, and Edmonton. Florida versus Carolina in a rematch. The Hurricanes fan in me is going to say Carolina wins, but I think if I wasn't a biased fan, I would still give it to Florida. I think, Matthew Tkachuk, Barkov, Ekblad, Bobrovsky, like that's a lot to overcome, but I really like what Carolina did at the trade deadline and what they've done in the offseason. They've gone for scorers. They have the sandpaper, even if they had to trade away the sandpaper to get Gensel. I mean, they got Jordan Stahl. They got Martinuk. Svechnikov, if he stays healthy in this playoff run, he's going to actually probably be able to match some of the Sam Bennett and uh, Kachuk bashing your face in. I think Carolina, they do have the physicality to match it as long as they stay healthy, Svechnikov especially. And the Hurricanes fan of me is picking Carolina to go to the Cup final. Edmonton versus Dallas. Now, this is a tough one, but I think Ottinger is good enough that I think Ottinger, and I've seen Ottinger be good in the playoffs against Alberta teams. As much as I've been picking Edmonton the whole year, has been like Edmonton's winning the cup this year. I underestimate Dallas so consistently and constantly get burned. And Dallas has the defense to stop McDavid, in my opinion, and Ottinger. And Edmonton's firepower is really good. I think their defense, other than Darnell Nurse, is actually a little bit better than people give it credit for. But I think Dallas is like going to be the dominant team in the Western Conference, which means the Stanley Cup final, Dallas versus Carolina. So I'm a Hurricanes fan. I think if I was like with the past round two and round three and round four, if I wasn't a Carolina Hurricanes fan, I may not pick Carolina because I would maybe have the Rangers beat Carolina if I wanted to look at it unbiasedly. But I don't. So I'm gonna have Carolina win the cup because I think every year from here on out, I'm gonna be predicting Carolina wins the cup. But I think when you look at Carolina, I think Carolina is they have the scoring. That's been the main thing. Now, sandpaper has been an issue at times before, but I think Carolina has shown they can match it. I actually don't think sandpaper was the issue against Florida. Obviously Slavin got injured in game 3, I think it was, off a clean hit by Sam Bennett. But I think Carolina, they have some of that pounding face. Steven Nason, Brent Burns, Jalen Chatfield, I think, has really actually improved that. And I think last year's Hurricanes, with the injuries they were hit with, it was Slavin got injured in the conference final. Svechnikov got injured before the playoffs. Pacioretty got injured. I would say, they had a lot of players getting injured. Teravainen got injured in round one. It was of their top six. It was Aho of their elite top six. Aho was the only one really left because Jarvis hadn't arrived yet. But Jarvis, he's willing to take the hits. I worry with playing a team like Dallas or playing a team like Florida or playing a team like probably the Rangers, but in my prediction, playing a team like Washington, I do worry with Jarvis's willingness to take a hit. He will get concussed at some point because I love Seth Jarvis for this, but he will go into the corners of the guy who's 20 pounds over than him at an awkward angle to make a play with the puck. And I love that about Jarvis, but I am concerned about it having lived with the team. But I think Carolina was the best team last year, even though I know they got swept by Florida, other than Vegas, I think no one was beating Vegas in the playoffs. It showed they were $14 million over the cap, all that. So I think, but other than that last year, I think Carolina, if they'd have stayed healthy, they would have made it to the Cup Finals, and it would have been a competitive series against Vegas. I think they've gotten better. So even though my unbiased fan probably has Dallas winning the Cup, maybe even Florida winning the Cup, I'm actually going to go with Carolina. I think Carolina wins the Stanley Cup this year. I'm going with it. Carolina's in cup or bust mode along with Edmonton, but I think Carolina, they can match the defensive side. I think Dallas's offense isn't enough to get past Carolina's defense. Well, with Edmonton, it was. So Carolina, I have them winning the Stanley Cup. Hopefully that's what happens. Hopefully I get this out. This video is going to be dated in literally less than 3 hours after recording this. Don't expect the views other than that the channel's back, being active for the playoffs because it's playoff hockey. Of course it is. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys like the content I'm producing on the channel, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And while this is basically a hockey playoff watch for the Hurricanes rather than becoming like just a consistent Hurricanes thing, it is what it is. I appreciate everyone that stayed with me and continues to watch the videos despite the long hiatuses I have to take. Because, like I said before, YouTube comes last in my life. It's my dogs number one, my job number two, regular hockey for me, and then and then the channel. So the channel unfortunately does have to come last. So that's why I go on hiatuses. But playoffs hockey, when the Hurricanes are in the playoffs, I'll always be here talking about it. So. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys. Let's go Canes for the playoffs.